Oh blimey, you know it's that time of year, don't you? When the AAAs all go into hibernation and all the games the publishers were a little bit nervous about come out in bloom. Hence all that agony business, I suppose, which publishers probably would be nervous about if they were planning to make eye contact with their mothers anytime soon. And if I were a publisher, I'd be a bit nervous about Vampire. I'd be all like, do you mind if I run it past a proofreader? Because I'm pretty sure you spelled it wrong. You spelled it right everywhere else. I'm just worried having the title like that might make us look slightly pretentious, like spelling magic with a K, or sticking an E on the end of noir. Vampire comes to us from French developer Dontnod Entertainment, and before you say anything, yes, I looked it up and the French don't spell vampire that way either, so who the fuck knows. Dontnod were previously responsible for Remember Me and Life is Strange, and as such, Vampire carries the distinction of being their first game whose title isn't a complete sentence. Vampire is a gothic action RPG with a wide open world in the Deus Ex sense of not being particularly wide or open, taking place in a sort of Legoland version of early 20th century London. The protagonist is Jonathan Reed, a tall dark pasty bloke with a pointy beard whose transformation into a vampire therefore couldn't have come fast enough. Excuse me, Yahtzee, they're called Econs. I beg your pardon. Econs. It's our special word for vampires. We made it up. I can fucking tell you did. Might stick with vampire if it's all the same to you. Econs sounds too much like an alien race of the week from Doctor Who. Anyway, Jonathan's a physician by trade and returns after the First World War to find London stricken by both the Spanish flu and a plague of ghouls who, not ghouls, Yahtzee, scowls. What's a fucking scowl? It's a human tainted by vampire blood. That's a ghoul! We call it a scowl! Don't do this to me again, Dontnod. I couldn't understand a fucking word of Life is Strange because everyone was speaking in this weird French interpretation of how young people talk. Anyway, now we get to the other reason publishers might be a bit nervous about Vampire, because it's trying to do something innovative. A surefire way to make publishers shrink back holding up crucifixes and sucking on a pre-order bonus for comfort. The rub is, each district has a number of named characters we can talk to and do side quests for, and as a physician it's Jonathan's responsibility to get to know them and craft them the right medicine when they're ill. It's not hard. 90% of the time they need fatigue medicine, which I'm pretty sure is just Red Bull. Unfortunately, Jonathan is a vampire on top of being a doctor, so he also has to decide which members of his social circle he's going to rip open and chug like a wild cherry Capri Sun, with the understanding that their disappearance will have knock-on effects on other characters and the health of the district as a whole, as well as your digestion. Now that sounds interesting, doesn't it? Especially since the value of a target's blood goes up the more you've gotten to know them, organically pushing us to get fully invested in the character's backstory and struggles before we put them in a sandwich. So, and here I find myself flashing back to my review of Remember Me, that was the good idea, here's how they fuck it up. I probably made it sound like you have to pick people to kill, didn't I? Much as the game does, but the thing is, you really don't. Your reward for chowing on your chums is a big dose of XP for buying vampire powers and stat upgrades, or perhaps I should say, le stat upgrades. But you also get XP from basic combat and achieving objectives, and after a whole game of not killing a single citizen, I was, at worst, slightly underleveled. And none of the boss fights were insurmountable once I had the patterns down. See, I went for the pacifist run because there was a distinct whiff of moral choice-driven story branching about all this, and my instinct is always to shoot for best ending, because it's usually the one that feels like an ending and not like I fucked something up. Vampire may be an exception, however. It really wants to be a story about a broody vampire tortured by the clash between his urge to kill and his duty to heal, but after I didn't kill anyone, it becomes a story about a perfectly nice, if slightly intense bloke who doesn't get enough vitamin D. So the quote good ending was a bit of a damp squib, one of Reed's vampire pals trying to get their melodrama on, going, ooh, we are nothing more than killers and our blood is cursed, and Reed's all like, bollocks we are, I haven't killed shit. Oh, so you haven't, never mind then, let's get McDonald's. Now, when Reed says he hasn't killed shit, he is truncating a little. He should have said, I haven't killed shit except for the 500,000 vampire hunters I murdered in standard combat. Yes, this is the rather glaring incongruity of Vampire. There's something a little bit hollow about Jonathan Reed's quiet nobility and pacifism when he's just had to murder 12 identical Cockney thugs on the way back from the chemist. Well, I suppose it's self-defense killing, but it still raises a lot of questions. How come killing these lads by the hundred somehow doesn't affect the rest of London's population like killing named characters does? Did they all get bussed in from Wolverhampton? Also, if Reed can drink blood from his enemies mid-combat in a way that doesn't kill them, why can't he figure out a way to non-lethally drink blood from his mates as well? A little please and thank you goes a long way. We do need there to be combat because otherwise there's no core gameplay loop, and more to the point it'd be fucking boring, so maybe we could have just fought ghouls? Sorry, scowls. But if we did that, it would raise the question of why all the named characters are obliviously going about their cheerful Cockney lives when there's a fucking zombie apocalypse going on next door. Also, since we're suggesting changes, did you ever consider making the combat less shitty? It's Dark Soulsy stamina management mixed with a bit of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines combat, ergo shittiness. There's a very small variety of monsters and weapons, and your vampiric powers aren't that great. They're not much fun to use, or even as effective as just twatting the dudes with one of the stronger weapons, and I'll remind you we're supposed to like these powers so much we'd murder our friends to improve them. The problem with the core dilemma of Vampire, kill friends to get XP to make combat easier, is that it falls apart if, like me, you enjoy a challenge, and removing it doesn't feel like a reward. And the other problem is with the other half of the concept, interacting with characters, exclusively done through fucking dialogue trees of the worst kind. Tell me more about the city, tell me more about your job, tell me more about that thing you said about the city that I'm awkwardly bringing up again apropos of nothing. Tell me more about this weird boggle-eyed look we're giving each other like a pair of love-struck goldfish in neighbouring bowls. They even routinely interrupt important plot cutscenes so that Reed can run down a questions list, even in the very last cutscene, just as everyone's poised for the climax. I'm sorry, but if you're still giving us exposition dumps perhaps literal seconds before the dramatic conclusion, something's gone wrong. It bears about as much resemblance to natural conversation as sticking your knob in a Muller fruit cornet as to a whirlwind love affair, and it makes all the participants come across as incredibly stiff. Well, they are British, Yahtzee. Oh, a cheeky sting. Scurry off, you rummy blighter. Fish and chips.